So it was like, no, 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 no. And they're like, we have
Double
fruit.
no.
And you're like, no,
No.
I can't. I know it's an orange. I can't have that.
Keisha Brooker and Catherine Price both have diabetes.
Anytime you go in a coffee shop or, you know, a store, and like for me, it's like, oh, okay, that's an entire case of no. I can only have coffee and tea.
Yes. Keisha and Catherine are taking control of their diabetes, but the illness has taken a lot from them. Thanksgiving is horrible. I don't even celebrate it anymore. I have lots of siblings that they want to make everything. This time, I was like the best baked macaroni and cheese maker in the family, closest to mom's, and sweet potato pie. But you have to taste those things, and I'm like, I can't do this, and it's really hard. I don't go out much. I don't do a lot of celebrations.
I mean, I remember thinking, I remember my blood sugar on my wedding day. It was like 300 something because I had a slice of cake, right? And it's like, just all these ways that diabetes affect these moments of our lives. It makes us kind of step away from human connection and things that would otherwise be very meaningful and joyful that other people don't necessarily even recognize that we're stepping away from.
Today's episode is about the cost of diabetes. It's an expensive illness to treat, but for this hour, we're not talking money. We're talking about how it changes people's lives. What does it mean to have to say no all the time, to feel lousy, to have people judge you? How does it affect people's ability to get jobs? There's no cure for diabetes. You have to manage it with medication, constant monitoring, and a pretty strict diet. If you don't do that, the complications can be serious, even deadly. So when a new treatment comes down the pipeline, people get excited, especially when that treatment sounds like it could be life-changing.
Today we're going to explain the difference between the disappointing goals and results of conventional diabetes therapy and the remarkable outcomes when the artificial pancreas system is added.
That's the beginning of an advertisement video from a company called Trina Health. They have made big headlines in recent months. Liz Tung explains why.
Trina Health launched its first clinics around 2011, and from the beginning, it was promising big things. The company said its treatments could reverse serious diabetes complications, lost sight, heart disease, liver failure. Within a few years, Trina was a full-blown franchise, with more than a dozen clinics across the country offering their treatment. Patients on social media and online forums hailed it as a miracle. And then came this news.
Serious federal indictments are down for longtime state representative Jack Williams, lobbyist Marty Connors, and healthcare CEO Ford Gilbert.
Ford Gilbert is the founder of Trina Health. He was recently arrested for bribing legislators in Alabama
to push a bill through the legislature that would require Alabama insurance giant Blue Cross Blue Shield to cover treatments at his 3 Alabama clinics.
Reports flooded the media, calling Trina a scam, an example of the worst abuses in our healthcare system. Despite that, at least some of the clinics have stayed open for business, including a new one in New York City called the Diabetes Relief Center. So a few days after news of Ford Gilbert, the Trina CEO's arrest, I jumped on a Greyhound to check it out. So I'm standing at Grand Concourse and East 149th Street. The Diabetes Relief Center is in the South Bronx, an area experts have called the epicenter of the diabetes epidemic. Standing at the corner, it's obvious how important neighborhood is when it comes to diabetes. Down the street, Dunkin' Donuts, there's a Popeyes, Burger King, past that, McDonald's. It's a busy area, crowded and noisy. But step inside the glass doors at 2825 3rd Avenue, and suddenly, it's quiet. Riding the escalator up, I start getting nervous. I'm visiting this clinic uninvited and unannounced just a few days after the guy who invented their treatment was arrested for fraud. I have visions of the staff throwing me out, but when I step into the office... Hi, my name is Liz. I'm a reporter from... The women at the desk are super nice. They call in their public relations guy, John Schulenberg. I'm sorry to just drop in.
Well, I'm sorry, because there's not much you can see right now.
It's still pretty early, maybe 11-ish, but John says the clinic's head doctor will be in around 3.
If there's a chance that you can check it.
Okay. As I'm packing up, I meet a guy with silver hair and a rolling suitcase.
You seem like you're a regular here.
Well, actually, my first day was yesterday. Yeah, I took the train down from Boston.
His name's Frank. He asked that I not use his last name to protect his medical privacy. And he came down specifically to try out the treatment. Frank's got good doctors up in Boston, but he's still struggling to manage his condition.
I'm a diabetic with a very high level of insulin resistance.
Serious cases like Frank's can mean you're at risk for heart attack, stroke, or Frank's biggest fear, kidney failure. All of which Frank's hoping to avoid by coming here.
But if it has the effect that I'm hopeful for, it can change your life.
Just then, a nurse calls him in.
We ready?
We agree to talk later, and I head to a coffee shop to wait. I've got a few hours, so I figure I'll look back at some Trina videos. Here's one featuring indicted CEO Ford Gilbert.
The Trina Health treatment is the only clinically proven, safe, and effective way to slow, stop, and reverse the chronic complications of diabetes.
Ford Gilbert, by the way, is not a medical doctor. He's a lawyer. And the story goes that he developed the treatment himself after his daughter Trina was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. The videos make this big deal about Trina's treatment being different from conventional therapy, but they do have one thing in common. Both revolve around insulin. So some quick background. Conventional treatment involves injecting insulin several times a day into the tissue right below your skin so that it diffuses slowly into your body. But with Trina, a pump delivers the insulin directly to your bloodstream in these little pulses that are designed to imitate the pancreas. The result, according to Trina,
Insulin reaches the liver quickly and in bursts, awakening the liver to stimulate the production of metabolic enzymes.
this is basically the big idea of Trina's treatment. The way they explain it, imitating the pancreas creates a chain reaction in the body that reconditions your metabolism so that it's better able to handle sugar. Trina doesn't exactly say that it can cure diabetes, but it does say it can reverse some of its causes and most dangerous complications, which sounds pretty incredible. And I'm not the only one who thinks so.
I was astounded by how outrageous their claims seemed.
That's endocrinologist Jill Crandall. She works at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, also in the Bronx, and is a longtime diabetes researcher. I asked her if the Trina treatment seemed legit, and her answer was a decided no.
They show these very impressive-looking pictures on their website of advanced neuropathic complications, ulcers, and other problems with the feet that seem to be cured following their treatment, and there's just absolutely no evidence to support that at all.
Jill says the Diabetes Relief Center makes it all seem so appealing.
It's so simple. This is all you have to do, and your problems are over. And I think people are desperate for an answer, for a solution like that.
The Diabetes Relief Center's website says their treatment is covered by Medicare, Medicaid, and most major insurers. But back in 2009, the agency that oversees Medicare and Medicaid said there's no clear evidence that the treatment works. When I called recently, the agency didn't answer my questions about their current payment policy, but we do know that it isn't approved by the FDA. If you read through the Trina website, though, you might come away with that impression. What is approved by the FDA? Insulin, which Jill says any doctor can prescribe in any way they see fit. So calling the treatment FDA approved, she says it feels like a deliberate misrepresentation.
So how they get away with it? I think they're skirting the law, and I think also they're targeting vulnerable populations.
Around 3, I head back to the Diabetes Relief Center, determined to ask some tough questions. What proof do they have that their treatment works? And how do they justify their claims about FDA approval and widespread insurance coverage? But back at the center, everything seems so professional and pleasant. I can feel my resolve starting to melt as the center's PR guy, John Schulenberg, walks me into their treatment room.
We have an open area of about 5,000 square feet that actually fronts onto 3rd Avenue.
It's spacious and modern, like medical care from IKEA. And at the center of all of it, 8 patients sitting on royal blue recliners as IVs send pulses of insulin into their blood. I approach a middle-aged woman with an eye patch. Her name's Jenny Malang, and she's about 12 weeks into treatment.
I was diagnosed in December as being legally blind, and my vision has improved since I've been on this program. So I'm happy about that, because that was the goal. That was my main goal.
Jenny comes once a week. She says each session takes 4 or 5 hours, but Jenny likes the visits. She says she feels taken care of.
The nursing staff is fantastic. They really are.
A team of 4 nurses runs around taking vitals, adjusting IVs, dispensing crackers and juice in case of dipping blood sugar. It's like mom fussing over you when you're sick. Over by the sitting area, Frank, the guy I met earlier who came down from Boston, has finished his treatment and is talking about the fear that brought him here.
I'm going to be one of their toughest cases.
He's got high glucose levels, which over time can destroy your kidneys.
And then you're essentially in dialysis for the rest of your life. So really trying to avoid that.
Frank's been on the conventional treatment route for a while. He's got heavyweight doctors in Boston and Baltimore, but they seem suspicious of the Trina treatment, which is why Frank says he's not telling his doctors back home. He wants to figure out first if it's working.
As I travel a lot, I'll probably do the next 2 in San Diego. There's a clinic there. I'm hoping that maybe someday soon there'll be one in Boston.
Just then, the center's chief medical and science advisor arrives.
Hi.
Dr. Jack Lewin.
Nice to meet you.
He's the guy I've been waiting for all day. The guy who I'm thinking should be able to tell me once and for all whether this treatment actually works.
I'm John, but I go by Jack. So it's Jack Lewin, MD.
Jack's a doctor, a cardiology specialist, not a diabetes specialist, but he's got tons of other credentials.
A lot of public health. I ran the whole
He's chair of the National Coalition on Healthcare, has testified before Congress. He was even considered for Surgeon General under Bill Clinton.
Seen healthcare from a lot of angles.
As we get settled in the clinic's staff room, he tells me about what attracted him to the treatment.
Very, very positive, stunning reactions of patients that I've interviewed. And I can't get that out of my mind.
But when I press him about what other doctors like Jill Crandall have said, that there's no evidence showing this actually works, Jack begins to hedge.
Well, again, this is anecdotal, okay? Because this is not science, because you've got to have a control group, you got to do all that stuff.
In other words, the treatment hasn't been proven, at least not by the kinds of high-quality studies the medical world requires. That's why Jack says he's here, to carry out a research project that shows how and why the treatment works. But these people here today, they're not part of a study. They're just patients who Jack says get charged $375 for each treatment session. So then I guess my question is, why not start with the study rather than start with the clinics? Because people are paying for this, right?
And that's a reasonable question. I can't answer that question. My role is not to. I'm not part of the clinic. I'm part of the research.
Jack gives a similar answer to my questions about the clinic's connection to the larger Trina Health Company.
Well, see, I'm a consultant here, so I'm not part of this. Yeah, I'm just an independent guy who is doing this work because I believe in it.
We finish up, and as I'm putting away my recording gear, I spot a chart on the wall. The title, Get to Goal, 84 treatments per week. And below that, a graph. The zagging line going up, that's the number of treatments the clinic has delivered over the past few months. Another zagging line, this one headed down, represents the number of empty chairs. It looks like they're a little behind where they want to be, but the clinic's clearly got high hopes, and so do their patients.
Liz Tong reported this story, and since she visited the Diabetes Relief Center in the Bronx, they called her to tell her they've cut ties with Trina Health. The Trina logos and several of the biggest health claims are gone from the website. The staff at the Diabetes Relief Center say they're still offering a version of the treatment Liz described in her story, but they're tweaking the way they deliver it. We're talking about diabetes, an illness that will change your life. Both Keisha Brooker and Catherine Price know this. Keisha is 45 years old. She is a community health worker in Philadelphia.
I've had type 2 diabetes since I was 25 years old.
Catherine is 39. She's a science writer.
I've had type 1 diabetes since I was 22 years old.
Keisha was told she was pre-diabetic at first.
And I'm like, well, what is that? What is a pre?
So she was healthy and athletic, so she didn't think this was a big deal.
My doctor told me that, just stay on a good diet and watch what you eat. This time I was like 110 pounds, and I'm like, watch what I eat, stay on a diet. Like, I'm gonna disappear. So.
But when she started having children, things got more serious.
And by this time I was about 100 and maybe 80 pounds. So each pregnancy I gained about 40 or 50 pounds.
Catherine started having weird symptoms in her early 20s. She was so thirsty all the time.
To the point that I was getting up in the middle of the night and drinking out of the faucet in the dorm's bathroom. And I was actually dreaming about soda, and I don't normally drink soda, but I was having these like weird fantasies of like sparkling things with ice cubes. And I was hungry all the time.
She was forgetting stuff and acting strangely.
I have this vague memory of being at a party and sitting underneath a table eating like a loaf of bread, which is not my normal MO in any circumstance, and I hadn't been drinking. It was just very weird. So I went to the health center and I wrote down all these symptoms, and I now know, like, if someone writes down all those symptoms, they're basically presenting the most classic case of type 1 diabetes ever, but I had no idea.
With both type 1 and type 2, the body has trouble controlling blood sugar levels. But after that, there are lots of differences. With type 1, your body stops making insulin and you have to inject it. With type 2, the more common version, your body doesn't use insulin properly. In terms of cause, diet and obesity are contributing factors for that type. We brought Catherine and Keisha into the studio to talk about their experiences and to tell each other what it's like to live with their type of diabetes.
So how are you with checking your blood sugars? Does that worry you sometimes when you have to check?
Well, it drives me crazy. I actually have a continuous glucose monitor, so I have this pump, this insulin pump, conveniently in my bra that I just pulled out, but we're getting personal here. So, as you know, I have type 1 diabetes, so that means that I've got an autoimmune disease where for some reason no one can fully explain. My body killed off the cells that make insulin, so I don't make any insulin. So I have to take artificial insulin or I die, which is kind of crazy for me to think about because it was only discovered in 1922. So, any time before before that, I just would be dead. I mean, there's so many reasons I feel like I shouldn't exist right now, but so insulin is just a constant, and I take it through this insulin pump that I'm keeping right now in my bra, but it also is hooked up to this continuous glucose monitor because I have to check my blood sugar. I mean, before I had this continuous monitor, I'd check probably like 12 times a day, so a lot. It was like a lot of checking with finger sticks. And with the continuous monitor, I can see a little graph that kind of shows where I am. Because as you know, I mean, the goal is to keep your blood sugar in this like super tightrope range where it's not too high, because that's how you get complications like the blindness and the amputations, and then not too low because then you could pass out and die on the spot. So one thing I think is really interesting about, I would think type 1 in particular, but for anyone who's on insulin, is that insulin is a deadly medication. I mean, it's so dangerous. I have had moments where I've accidentally given myself too much and realized that I very well could have killed myself if I didn't realize it. And it's like, what other medication would a doctor send a patient home with to guess at their doses? I mean, I don't take consistent amounts. I have to guess it for every meal. And anytime I get it wrong, I could end up in the emergency room or worse. And it's kind of overwhelming when I actually think about that. And I'm wondering, can you tell me a bit more about type 2 and then what some of the challenges are for you?
Well, for type 2, so I'm still a little confused on what's going on with my body. I check my sugars twice a day with a glucose meter. And that's just before breakfast and before dinner. If they're 5, I'm fine. The only thing is, with type 2 diabetes, you're on pills. And when you check your blood sugar and it's 200, it's just 200.
Right, you're not going to do anything.
It's nothing, so it's just there. And then you're hoping it goes down. So I used to be afraid to check it, and it's hard to not check it, but it's hard to check it, because if you check it and it's high, you want to starve yourself for the rest of the day. If you check it and it's normal, you're like, yay, now I can eat something. Or if you check it and it's low, you're eating a lot more. And it's just like a roller coaster.
Oh my God, I use the exact same word. It's like chasing your blood sugar. It's like, for me it's too high. If it's too high, I can do something. I take insulin, but then if I overshoot that, then it like plummets. And you can actually see on the little graph on my continuous glucometer, it sometimes looks like a roller coaster because it goes up and down. And I don't know about you, I'd be interested in your thoughts about this, but I feel like it's such an emotional disease and people don't really recognize that part of it, where there's so much self-judgment and criticism. And I think of it like if you had to get on the scale like however many times a day, and you're of course it's just a number, but of course you're gonna have an emotional response. So it's like the feeling that you did something wrong, but you can't do anything about it, and even if you get it right, you don't know if it's going to be right the next time. I mean, I feel like diabetes can really promote thinking about eating in a way people don't really recognize.
Now that you said that, it really could. My appetite has decreased a lot. But when I get on that scale now, and I see that I'm doing more walking, and I'm doing, I have changed my eating habits, and the numbers are going down, I'm a little excited to get on. But that weekend, when I overdid it, and then I gained that couple ounces, and it's like, what did I do to myself? And that's where you get your self-judgment at.
Right, yeah.
That's Keisha Brooker and Catherine Price talking about living with diabetes. Keisha has type 2, Catherine type 1. We'll hear more from them later on. Coming up.
I have seen over the years actually letters that come out from employers saying you are not being hired because of diabetes.
When diabetes means not getting the job you want. That's next on The Pulse.
The Penn Museum supports WHYY and presents its brand new Middle East galleries, now open. From the 4,500-year-old crowning jewelry of a Mesopotamian queen to one of the world's oldest wine vessels, the Middle East galleries feature more than 1,200 objects and interactives that illuminate 10,000 years of human history. Details about galleries and related programming at penn.museum/MEG.
Universities with big endowments spend millions on splashy projects.
They can go around and write a check for $215 million without blinking an eye.
So why are they asking students to pay more?
It's like, my dad was like, is there any way you can do it in 3.5 semesters?
We pry open the black box of college endowments on the next Reveal.
This afternoon at 4 on WHYY.
Bryn Mawr Rehab, part of Mainline Health, supports WHYY. At the Comprehensive Concussion Center at Bryn Mawr Rehab, the concussion treatment and recovery program can keep a split-second injury from becoming a lifetime of fogginess for those who don't want just part of their lives back. For more information on the Bryn Mawr Rehab Comprehensive Concussion Center, including locations throughout the region, mainlinehealth.org/concussion, because how you live tomorrow depends on where you rehab today.
This is The Pulse, stories about the people and places at the heart of health and science. I'm Mike Scott. We're talking about the cost of having diabetes. It can have a huge emotional toll on your life, the time and effort that goes into staying well. This illness can also affect your ability to get work. You're not supposed to be fired because you have diabetes, but will you get hired for a job in the first place? Alan Yu looked into it.
If you have diabetes, here in America, there are some jobs you're probably not going to get. You can't join the Coast Guard, the Army, any branch of the military. Sometimes it's possible to get a special waiver, but generally, the policy is no. Right now, the military can simply disqualify you if you have diabetes and need insulin. Adam Roth knows this. He's been rejected from several branches of the military because he has type 1. Adam's in great shape. He'd already done the sit-ups, the push-ups, the running, the monkey bars to pass the military's physical tests.
The course isn't, it doesn't make exceptions for diabetics. Everyone's treated the same.
Right now, he works in Dubai. That's where I reached him.
There is a lot of, running around. There's an obstacle course. You're falling under the barbed wire and all the things that people see in movies.
One recruiter tried to sneak him in.
I recall one recruiter telling me, hey, just don't tell them that you're diabetic, and then maybe they'll find out while you're already in and you'll be able to stay. And, I'm sure they had good intentions, but, obviously that would be, I think, criminal in lying on my application.
Adam did eventually get a job in law enforcement. Later, he joined the security detail for the Secretary of Commerce. He polices exports, so he has a job that he likes. But he still has to deal with what other people imagine having diabetes is like. One time, several years ago, he was traveling to Singapore to prepare for a visit from the Secretary of Commerce. It's a long flight, so he made sure one of his fellow security guys knew he has diabetes.
I said, look, if I start, acting a little strange, please just give me a piece of candy. He said, oh, no, it's okay. I know exactly what to do. Show me where your medicine is. I'll give you a shot. How many units do I need to give you? And I said, no. That would actually make me worse. Please don't give me any injections of anything. And really just give me a piece of candy and I'll be totally good to go in minutes.
Adam says he could see the other guy was expecting something much more dramatic.
It was disappointing that like a 50-year-old would be all I needed to be saved.
So this is the kind of thing that people with diabetes have to deal with. Perception problems. People misunderstand what their needs are, how sick they are, whether or not they can do their jobs. Thomas Lindley has had to deal with that. He's a 67-year-old truck driver in Arizona. He was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes 10 years ago. That didn't disqualify him from the job. He kept on working. He exercised a lot more. He made other changes for his health.
I had to give up donuts, and I'd been a law enforcement officer for quite a few years, and that was a hard one.
Thomas kept driving, and he says there were no problems. But then his company got bought out, and that company considered him a safety risk. So the new company didn't let him drive. He wasn't making any money, so he thought he would apply for disability benefits.
Their insurance company that provided short-term disability said, no, he's completely safe to drive, and it's legal for him to drive. You need to put him back on the board and let him go back to work. And they said, no, we're not going to do it. He's unsafe. And it was an argument, and I was caught in the middle.
Thomas is now suing that trucking company for discrimination. In a statement, the company says what happened to Thomas was a safety issue, and that, quote, we feel very strongly that we did not treat him in any way unfairly or unlawfully. Greg Paul is Thomas's attorney. He has diabetes himself.
The heart of the Americans with Disabilities Act is to do an individualized assessment of a particular applicant or employee.
So companies are supposed to look at you as a person. Can you do the job? If you're waiting tables, can you carry plates of food and serve customers just as well as anyone else? According to the Americans with Disabilities Act, that's what companies should ask. But Greg says sometimes they just have a blanket ban on anyone with diabetes.
I have seen over the years actually letters that come out from employers saying you are not being hired because of diabetes.
Greg says when people hear a no like that, that's when they might end up suing somebody. Here's an example. A pilot is suing the Federal Aviation Administration because the agency has a policy. If you have diabetes and need insulin, you can't be a commercial pilot. The general policy is no. Stay tuned, that's being challenged right now.
Alan Yu reported this story.